And happy new months to you, Mr. G Quest. Gbolahan, welcome.
Happy new month to you, Valentine, and good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Ayo.
Good
How's
morning,
everyone?
Mr. G Quest.
Very well.
Good.
Good to see you again, man.
Good to be here.
Join the conversation, Lagos, by sending us messages to our WhatsApp number 0809 444 0981.
And on Twitter, we're all at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981 so that we can easily track your messages. We're also live streaming on YouTube. So if you'd like to go beyond listening to us and actually seeing what's going on in the studio behind the scenes, please go onto YouTube /Smooth981FM and you would find us right there.
All right, let's start with you, Uade, for this first story. I'm taking it from the Vanguard newspaper. Alleged 7.6 billionaire fraud. Ohanaeze chieftains lawyers fault suspension of Kalu's trial. So the trial has been going on for close to a decade now. Over 11 years.
The trial has been on and
So
off.
far, so the Coalition of Human Rights Lawyers and Ohanaeze chieftains have faulted the federal government over its suspension of the trial of the former governor of Abia State and senator-elect for Abia North Senatorial District. If we would recall, Ojizo Kalu was indicted with his family members and his company, really, Slot Nigeria Limited, for diverting funds meant for the state into its coffers. But what are your thoughts on this story?
Well, the case has been on and off, and it became even more prominent last year, where the FCC brought the charges to court, and most times that the case was heard in court, Ojizo Kalu was practically not in town. He was either
flying in and out of Germany for medical treatment.
He was either on the sick bed in Germany or he was too ill to come to court.
But he was so active. Leading up to the
that's the point. So he joins the APC to be the senatorial candidate, and the next thing is he's well enough to what's it called, campaign for elections, and all of a sudden, boom.
So it's boom.
It's boom. The cases, the AFCC doesn't have a case against him. That's what a lot of people are saying. When you join the APC, automatically
your sins are forgiven.
Well, that's not automatic because that's just, I understand that you're quoting a statement, to the former Edo State governor,
of course,
and now the APC chairman.
Of course.
But as we say, I mean, these things are said. Maybe sometimes you just script to rile people up to get them excited about electioneering campaign. But I said there's no smoke without fire.
Valentine, I'm an Edo man, and you know that saying that says the witch cries at night and the baby dies in the morning.
Wow.
Who doesn't know that the witch was the one that?
So
let's just leave it there.
But how does this? Because the general suspicion is that it discredits the anti-corruption campaign.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help the government, especially when it comes to anti-corruption. If we're, like someone said, we're fighting corruption, we're not trying to stop corruption. And fighting corruption for me is
lopsided.
Yeah, that is lopsided. That's one.
Seems
and then
lopsided.
It seems okay. Let me use the word seems. It seems lopsided
because if you say it's a final statement.
Well, I haven't seen anybody that they really tried for this corruption thing that has, aside from those that were tried in absentia and the cases were won, like the one that we said.
A few people have been jailed recently
for this anti-corruption. Okay. Well, it seems lopsided. I don't think the systems are working efficiently to fight this corruption. That's my own opinion.
That's interesting. We hope we are able to renew the confidence in the judicial system, which is where most of the questions are emanating from. But let's move on.
Just the last thing. It's not just the judicial system. Even the people who are trying to prosecute.
Exactly.
Your cases are not full.
They need to be watertight.
They need to be watertight. The evidences are next to nothing, and then you come to court, even your own witness will be the one that will tell you that is not true. So what happens?
So you're saying that the over 19 witnesses that EFCC presented didn't have enough material to defend their case or their work?
So why has the case gone stopped from court?
Okay. So let's move on to you, Gbolahan, for this next story from the Premium Times. Premium Times has this headline: Nigeria to set up cashew processing plants in 4 states. And that is coming from the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Ogbeh. He said this in an interview, saying that Nigeria needs to add value to the product, cashew, and create employment. We understand that over 76% of Nigerian exports are in crude, about 14% in petroleum products, and just a very small 10%, out of which cashew exports, cashew, coconuts, and Brazil nuts constitute, actually the raw form of it constitute about 0.31%, and this is a major problem. Now, Adobe is mentioning that besides boosting the exports of these products, Nigeria needs to do more to not only export raw materials but finished products. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes. Well, I'll start by saying that I know the challenges that are often faced by cashew exporters and cashew processors, and also those that also do the trading of cashew. I've some sort engaged in that form of trade in the past before, and I know the challenges that is also often faced anyway, from sourcing the materials, quality materials, and also getting to the point of transporting between, you know, the areas that you source for the materials from and getting it down to Lagos. It's an Herculean task to do. And the reason why you have this Herculean task is because of the problems that you face with logistics in sourcing and procuring these materials, and the cost of the logistics as well too, when you're talking about it. Often at times when you're transporting a lot of all these materials from areas such as Oyo State, Kogi State, and it also mentioned Enugu and Benue as well too, you find out that you have a lot of losses in the process as you're transporting. So at the end of the day, a lot of these people that do the export are short change often at times, and you find out that you have a lot of wastages, you have a lot of damaged goods, and then you end up not getting paid as much as you should have. But you know, when we look at what the Minister of Agriculture is talking about, it's an excellent move when we're looking at it. Of course, we're talking about setting up processing zones, and the 4 processing zones that he's talking about is in the areas that you source cashew a lot. You often get a lot of good quality cashew in Kogi State, in Oyo State as well too, and he's also talking about Benue and Enugu.
And
so
he's suggesting that those states should have plants set up there.
Yeah, that's the processing plants that he's talking about. So he said that, you know, a lot of challenges that have been faced by a lot of people in setting up these processing plants is to do with finances, which is often the case anyway, because to set up a processing a processing plant for cashew is talking about spending nothing less than $2 million. Well, I don't know if Valentine has $2 million lying somewhere that we could easily invest, in cashew. So yeah, so you find out that a lot of people are of course out of pocket when we're talking about setting up a cashew processing zone. So it's a good move to have this done, and he's saying that we're hoping that this one of it or 2 of it will be set up before the end of next year, is what they're saying.
We seem to be a country of more hopes than action, and we keep talking about this thing over year in, year out. And so it's what is, see, we know that there are fundamental issues with not just the system, but the fact that we lack infrastructure is glaring in our faces.
Yes.
You find that we seem to detach ourselves. When I say we, are probably referring to those who hold positions of power that could make decisions that would make sure or affect the lay down of infrastructure. I mean, laying down simple things, roads. Our roads are not good enough to have products, goods, and services transported from maybe Lagos straight to Port Harcourt. So, do you think these are very Herculean problems to tackle?
They're not Herculean problems to tackle if the government is serious about tackling all this. I mean, it's all about mobilizing funds, and just focusing and sitting down and getting the job done. I mean, it's as simple as that anyway. You need to just focus and get the job done. I mean, if I should add to this as well, to one of the reasons why this is very, very important is that just a few days ago, about 3-4 days ago, it was reported that a lot of the cashew exporters were actually complaining that they have $300 million worth of cashew exports that is actually being stuck at the Lagos port, waiting to be exported out of the country. So you can see the amount of damage that this actually does when we're talking about infrastructure, you know, in terms of roads, in terms of having access to export your goods easily as well too. So it makes a lot of sense as well too if we're going to be processing this, because of course we'll be reserving a lot of foreign currency and creating jobs as well too, which is the idea behind this. But let's hope the government is able to live up to what they promised.
Hopefully.
Wait to see.
We have a few comments here. I'll start off from YouTube. Now, Anthony Samson Young says, just speaking on this story, logistics in Nigeria would make Nigerian processed cashew too expensive
Exactly.
for the international market. So, seeming, agreeing with what you've mentioned there, Gbolahan. And then Kingsley on Twitter says, since the assumption of office, it seems this administration's corruption fight has been lopsided. So in terms of giving opinion on that one, and moving on to WhatsApp, we have from engineer Olawi in Ikeja. The only trial we're seeing is trial by media. Any government that isn't resolving first principle issues concerning the entire judicial system, from investigation to imprisonment, can't claim to be fighting corruption. And then we have here from Yinka, it appears that EFCC so he's asking why they need 19 witnesses in court, and in the end they still fluff the cases. That EFCC must be trained on how to actually handle cases and not just media trials. So talking about media trial here again.
All right, let's move on to the story from the Vanguard newspaper. I'll come to you, Uade, for your analysis on this one. We have shortage of hostel accommodation, water supply. Katsina, who's lamenting? National Youth Service Corps. So, in an address that was made at the swearing-in ceremony of the 2019 NYSC Batch A Corps members deployed to the states, talking about the Katsina state, well, the coordinator, Hajia Ramatu Sanda, made this known in her address, said that there's a shortage of hostel accommodation, water supply, and it really stands in the way of the officials carrying out their duties effectively. Well, these are the two major requirements, or rather essential materials or provisions that UCO members or citizens need: water, accommodation.
True.
And these are the same problems we saw evidence at the elections.
During the elections. Brought light to this.
My first question will be this: is this still really relevant in today's Nigeria?
What is
the youth service?
Okay.
It's something we have to think about, because at the end of the day, we spend so much money. The amount of money that we pay to the youth coffers from the government coffers is so huge in comparison to the amount of money we invest in putting them in the right places for them to spend 3 weeks to bond. We're going back to what we said earlier about infrastructure. How much money has been put into the infrastructure of expanding these places, the camps and all? Why? Because this year, over 1 million students are going to take JAMB. About 70% will go into universities.
Out of which maybe
740%
might graduate.
So that's 400,000.
Percentage.
That's 400,000. That's minus those who have gone abroad. So it's increasing. The facilities and the infrastructures are not expanding, and we have a huge difficulty in accommodating a lot of them. Today you have 2-3 batches of NYSC youth corpers going to camp every three months or every 4 months. So every quarter you have at least another batch going into camp. So how are you managing this infrastructure?
I like that you pointed out those facts, because I mean, we find that reality is our population is increasing every year,
and that's true.
We have more people getting into schools, which is a good thing. We have more graduates coming out,
which is good.
But do you think this is speaking to the government's apathy to not just education, but government doesn't have apathy to education, that's clear, because they've made statements recently that's indicating the contrary. But do you think that they do not see the importance of NYSC anymore?
Seeing the importance,
or they are not just able to provide funds for it?
Seeing the importance and actually putting down the funds to match that importance is a different thing entirely. It's easy for me to say I'm going to send my children to school, and every day I refuse to pay their school fees.
You make that decision based on your pocket, right?
And based on how
your pocket is. That's one. And then two, where you find out that I cannot afford to pay a school that is 100,000, I will look for a school that is 20,000. And my point exactly: do we still need to continue with the NYSC? It's laudable, it's good. However, the cost of moving people, of moving Nigerians up and down, and actually protecting they're Nigerians, and actually protecting them, accommodating them. You don't have water, providing for them. You don't have water, you don't have accommodation.
Don't have lights.
let's
So-
even
so-
look water and accommodation, breeding ground for all forms of illnesses.
What would then be, I don't know if you have one, but if you did, what would be your suggested alternative? Because at the end of the day, the reason why NYC was set up was for reconciliation, integration following the civil war. So it'd be important to find out if we still have the issue of conflicts when it comes to tribes, and if it's already been done and dusted, which I don't think it is, what would be your suggested cost-effective alternative, if any?
Well, in terms of integration of tribe and of tribes, is it done and dusted? I don't think it is, but I don't think moving people from one place to the other would actually solve that. Why? Because technically, human beings are migrants, irrespective of what happens. So my solution will be scrap the NYSC. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Educate us more in terms of the history of Nigeria, of the things that have gone on, and why you.
So bring back history to
Exactly,
education.
and why you should integrate everybody, whether you're in Lagos or in Kaduna or wherever it is.
And there might be a larger conversation as to whether we should even consider making it less, or rather not making it mandatory.
Mandatory, yeah.
All right, so let's move on very quickly to this next story, and that is for you, Gbolahan. From the Punch newspaper, we toughened SIM card replacement to stop fraud. It's coming from the Nigerian Communications Commission. Your thoughts on this story?
Yes, this was a statement that was made by the Director of Zonal Operations, Mrs. Amina Shehu, in Abuja, Nasarawa State, and just a few days ago.
Okay,
And
on Saturday.
Yes, on Saturday, she was talking about the challenges that some people might be encountering when it comes to replacement of your SIM card. If you go to your telcos to say that you've lost your SIM card, or you're having issues with it and you need your SIM card replaced. Right now, the moment what she's talking about is that there's some stringent guidelines that have been put in place to ensure that the rightful owners are the ones that are actually getting the SIM cards, and to prevent miscreants or fraudsters.
Those who swap SIM cards for fraudulent purposes.
Exactly, those who swap SIM cards for fraudulent purposes, from having access to your data, having access to your banking information as well,
Even
too,
your
and
contact list.
your contact list, and then perpetrating whatever crimes through your phone or so. It's a good move. It's something that I would have thought was already put in place anyway, right from the start, when you were talking about the moment where you started making access to SIM card a little bit more stringent by asking for more information, identity, and all of that as well too, and the BVN registration and your biometrics, not BVN, the biometrics registration anyway. So it makes a lot of sense. It's just that, of course, she's just trying to tell the people that if a lot of people are complaining about what is needed, there's so many things that are actually needed, such as an affidavit as well, to a court affidavit, and your national identification card, amongst other things that is actually required. Well, I don't know why you would actually need an affidavit for getting a SIM card replacement anyway.
In other climes, when you want to register for a SIM card, you ask for your international passport.
Well, not necessarily, just a form of identification, a national identification, and maybe a proof of address as well for that. That's good enough. I don't have to go to the court to ask for an affidavit before getting my SIM cards replaced.
Thank you, Bola.
All right, thank you, Bola. We'll just take some comments before we move on to our next story. Kudus from Sule says, I'm with your Greek minister on this cashew initiative. Recently, when I traveled to my village in the north central area, the reality of the enormous cashew potential we have in this country dawned on me. It's high time we stop exporting jobs abroad and keep the jobs within for the benefit of the citizenry. Setting up those processing plants is a right step in the right direction.
Now, money.
And Ogbeh says, let's not deceive ourselves with cashew trees. Which cashew trees are we harvesting? Are they not those wild ancestral plantations? Are they sustainable? What efforts are we making to grow new improved varieties that is friendly to the mass market? So we have not started. Regards. Interesting.
Good point.
And Yomi from Festac says, if we are serious about integration or reintegration, the NYSC should be replaced by state of residence swap as against state of origin.
Fantastic.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll go on to this one, Uade. I'll come to you. Thisday newspaper has the story. Defense Minister blames insurgency for Nigeria's declining participation in peacekeeping operations. Now, just a few details. Over the weekend, the Minister of Defense, Brigadier General Mansur Danali, retired, attributed Nigeria's declining participation in global peacekeeping operations to the country's concentration of military assets on the war against insurgency in the northeast.
Well, I'll just speak to this briefly. That's true. Nigeria has always been known to have fantastic peacekeeping forces everywhere they've gone, and it's a shame because of the various insurgents across Nigeria, from the Niger Delta to Boko Haram to everything. It's sad, but the only good thing that I can see from here, a major part of it, is the what's it called, the center, which has been accredited by the United Nations, which would help to train other Peace Corps members in Nigeria, which should provide some form of what's it called, brand recognition for Nigeria as
so the profile uplift,
the profile uplift in terms of providing sound knowledge about peacekeeping. What they've been great all over the world.
Yes, they have.
And I commend them for that. So let's not just go into too much more detail.
Thank you very much. You give kudos to where it's due, and in this regard, with regards to peacekeeping missions, the Nigerian military has done quite well. Gbolahan, I'll come to you for the next story here, and it says in the Punch newspaper, federal government will revert to January to December budget cycle in 2020. Now, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, I hear you chuckle, Udoma Udoma stated this in Abuja when he defended his ministry's 2019 budget in the Senate. This is the first month in the second quarter, and we do not have a budget that has been passed in 2019. Gbolahan, what do you have to say about this?
Yes, very interesting. I mean, over the last 4 years now of this administration, the budget has not actually been passed, or we haven't actually started off the budget at the beginning of every budget year. Anyway, there's always been budget delays, and the budget is actually been running concurrently every time with the previous year's budget. So right now, at the moment, of course, we're still waiting for the 2019 budget to be passed. 2018 budget is still running, even though we're actually operating the 2018 budget below par. As we speak now, we're running at about 50%, or just slightly below that as well. So right now, at the moment, the Minister of Budget and Planning, which is Udoma Udo, is promising that going forward from 2020, they're looking at realigning the budget so that at least the budget starts as at when due in 2020 or so. And he's given the reason why the 2019 budget wasn't actually passed. Of course, we know that there's always been friction between the legislators and the executives. We also know that as well too, that sometimes the president or the executives haven't been so friendly in presenting the budget early enough so that the budget can be treated by the legislators and it can be passed. Often at times you find out that the budget is usually presented maybe sometime November or December or so, and we would have expected it to have been presented to the legislators probably much earlier.
But is November, December not too late?
It is
according
late.
To the MTF, that's the medium-term
Expenditure framework. Yes.
You're meant to give at least about 4
4
months.
months, absolutely.
You're meant to present it. So when you're saying November, December, that's not good enough.
Yes, you should be talking about ideally August, September is when you should be presenting the budget to the legislators so that they can prepare, go through it, and then pass the budget. But as I said, we always have it so late, but they're now promising this time around as well that going forward they're going to do it 2020. So we're waiting and expecting them to do that by 2020.
So guys,
because
we understand that. Sorry, Patricia. 2020 is just a year from now.
It is.
There are a lot of people on. Excuse me. There are a lot of people on this
Valentine
table.
is 9 months from
Yes.
now.
9 months exactly. Thank you, Uade. There are a lot of people on this table. MDAs, ministries, departments, agencies, they're all involved. They all submit contributions to this budget. So what would I think the essential question we should be asking is, I mean, should there be, what ways can we trigger better responsiveness from these ministries, departments, and agencies to be committed to their jobs, to sending this their contributions to the budget early enough? Because sometimes when we talk about the budget, it's almost as if the focus is only on the executive and the legislature. But there are other ministries that are involved in this process.
Well, you know, the ministries, the MDs, as you talked about, they're all under the executives. So the executives should be able to get them moving. And the beauty about it as well is that when we are talking about the budget, we are talking about the medium-term expenditure framework, which is meant to be an aggregate of your projected spending over the next 3 years. So ideally, you should have a rough idea of what your budget is going to look like, even before you get to that point as well. So if you submit the MTF, it already gives you a forecast of what your expenditure is going to be like.
All right,
So we
well.
should expect better by 2020. But I'll just like to say as well, just as we've said, by August, September, we would know if the budget is going to be passed for 2020.
Thank you very much.
So
We
we'll
are
wait and see.
looking, we're
It's only a few
watching,
months away.
and we have announced it today. Nigeria is waiting for August. If we don't see anything, we will be asking Senator Udoma.
Okay. Nifor on YouTube sent in this message. It says, if your biometrics were taken at the point of SIM registration, what other stronger proof is there that you're the owner of the SIM when you provide your ID? That's from Yomi. And these are essential questions. Somebody else said, okay, I'll take this one from Ace from Agor. Ace said, I recently did a welcome back. If you have your SIM pack given when you purchase the SIM, you won't have issues or need an affidavit.
Even if you purchased it in 1999 and you moved houses twice.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so let's go on to Premium Times. I'll come to you for this. Now, the National Association of Nigerian Students are calling out and saying that they're going to go on a protest. Reason why? They're rejecting NNPC's recruitment requirement. And this story is in Premium Times. They've said that it's anti-poor, it's anti-mass. What do you have to say about this?
This is a difficult one to talk about. Yes and no. Yes, everybody has a chance. So what he's saying is, many a times because you close state schools or government-owned universities, so many a times students spend 4, 5 year courses, you spend 9, 10 years, so you might not meet the criteria.
So that's sorry, just to point out, that's essentially why they're going to protest.
Why they want to
that
protest.
The conditions
so the conditions for public universities do not meet. They believe does not meet the requirements for the recruitment.
Yes.
My only grouse here is, if you state an age limit, don't state a lower level of your graduation. Because 28, I can graduate at 22, and I graduated in 2013, and I'll just, or 21, and I'll just be getting towards 28 now. So that's my grouse here. But in terms of saying it's against the poor, I can't say yes to that, because as I heard from someone yesterday, over 12 million people have applied for jobs in NNPC from this recruitment process.
I can imagine. I mean, we have.
So, is it anti-poor? So if it was
the reason
anti-poor,
they're saying anti-poor, let's look at the requirements, just to, in terms of the details of the requirements. What NNPC have asked for is that you must have graduated from an accredited university, polytechnic or monotechnic, not earlier than 2014, and you must not be more than 28 years of age as of December 31, 2018, meaning that, like what you've mentioned, so what they're saying is that for many of these people who went to public schools, they can't afford private schools. Obviously, the private school students would not really have a challenge with meeting this criteria.
And so that's the last 5-6 years, I don't think public school closure has been that much. There are quite a number of people. Recently,
ASU has just come off a strike.
Recently,
all right.
Most of the people that graduate these days, my working experience has shown me 22, 23.
Yes.
22, 23.
Right.
Talking to so many of them. So this criteria is usually standard across board today for most of the organizations that you see.
All right, thank you very much. Perhaps we'll still debate on that. Should that criteria still be stipulated in the requirements for recruitment in public agencies? Our final story here: Nigeria can't feed sufficiently despite agric contribution. And this statement is credited to the President Buhari, and the report is in the Guardian newspaper. He made this known yesterday at the opening of the 40th Kaduna International Trade Fair. And what he has said is the country has continued to face the challenge of meeting domestic food requirements, as well as providing raw materials for the manufacturing sector and export.
Yes, I think it's a bit of a media sensationalization anyway by the headline saying that Nigeria cannot feed sufficiently despite agri contribution.
Yeah.
Of course, what the president is saying, who actually was represented by the Minister of Industry and Trade, that is then Dr. Okechukwu and Nelama, was that, of course, right now at the moment, the agri sector isn't producing enough to meet the needs of the industrial sector, and what the government needs to do as well to both the federal government and the state government is to look at ways at which they can work in partnership both the industrial sector and the agri sector as well in meeting the demands of the industrial sector, so that of course we can grow the economy, we can do a lot more with industrialization and getting more raw materials as well too. So that's simply what the Minister of Agriculture, who was representing the president, was saying.
Thank you, Gbolahan.
Thank you.
Emmanuel on WhatsApp says, weren't the problems with accommodation and water obvious to the Katsina State Coordinator of NYSC before the core members reported to the orientation camp? Wasn't there an estimate of expected core members with which planning could have been made beforehand? These are real questions. And then we have Adebowale of Adebowale sending this.
Says, I don't think NYC should be scrapped. Rather, the federal government should use the 3 weeks intensive for some vocational trainings, then put all the allowances for 1 year together and give them at the end of the 3 weeks orientation program. By so doing, some of the core members can start their own businesses, and this will drastically reduce unemployment in Nigeria.
Well, thank you very much for your messages. We'll extend this conversation inside of Lagos Talks 981. Do join us at 9 o'clock when we open up the phone line so you can call in. Special thanks to our analysts who stepped in this morning for your analysis. Mr. G Quest is Gbolahan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you can find Uade up on Twitter as Mr. Re-Ink, or rather at Re-Ink Niger 2017. Next, Lagos, we talk sports inside of the locker room. Good morning.
Good morning.